Well, this morning we are closing out our Jesus Promises series. We started this series on Easter Sunday looking at the promise that Jesus made that he would suffer a brutal death on the cross and then 3 days later would rise from the dead. And we said, so if Jesus can keep that promise, then we should listen to and pay attention to the other promises he made, because if he can keep that one, he can keep his other promises as well. And so we're closing out this series this morning with a promise that is so big. It's so big that it won't just change your life. It's a promise that's so big that if you take hold of it, it could actually change how you live your life, right? It could actually change your approach to the way you live your life. So what would you have to know about a person who would make a promise like that? About one who would make a promise that's so big that you would actually change how you lived your life? Think about it. I would imagine, if you're anything like me and if I'm anything like you, that we have a way of living in our lives where we're pretty convinced that we've got things sorted out for the most part until something sort of like happens that reveals that. But we are pretty convinced that we've got a good way of living our lives. We've got a long history, a lot of experience living our lives in the way that we're living our lives. And so it would take for us to change our approach to life, how we live our lives. It would take more than just a big promise. Right? It would take more than just really flowery words, really hopeful statements about the future. It would take something more, because it would take who it is that's making the promise, not just the promise itself. A big promise wouldn't be enough. You would have to completely trust the one who was making the promise. But imagine this. Imagine that gets settled. And you can now approach life with a big promise and with complete trust in the one who made that promise to you. A big, beautiful promise made to you, given to you by someone who you can trust completely. You would probably carry that promise with you in some sort of way everywhere you went. That promise would be precious to you. It might be the most precious thing that you ever have. That it will be a source of peace in hard and confusing times. That when something that doesn't seem anything like the promise, seems like it's contrary to the promise, would show up in your life, you would actually take that promise out and you would look at that promise and remember that promise, and then look at whatever it is that you're experiencing in light of that promise, because it's such a big promise and it's changing the way you approach your life. To make sense of what you're experiencing by looking at it and understanding it while holding on to the big promise. You'd live differently living with that kind of promise. How about this one? Jesus promised to come back for us. Jesus keeps his promises. Wouldn't it be great? We've just been walking through and spending time together worshiping and praying. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could just stay right here together and wait for the promise to be fulfilled? To be a people remembering the big promise, reminding each other of the big promise, just spending our lives waiting in anticipation for the promise to be kept, gathered together, waiting for a promise to be fulfilled in a place where it is easy to hold on to it, where we're reminded, where we sing words together and we pray together and we encourage each other along the way. But the problem is that's not how it works. We have to live it out in a messy world. Actually, we don't just live it out in a messy world. It's not just the world that's a mess. We have to live out there with the mess that we make for ourselves, right? We mess up too, where we have to sort it out and live it out in all of these in-betweens of life. Trusting the promise when we don't know where or when or exactly how it's going to be fulfilled. And there's all kinds of things that happen along the way that shake us up, that leave us shaken. Broken relationships that we thought would last forever. A doctor's call with test results that wasn't what we were hoping for. A financial hit that feels like it's the last straw and we have no idea what happens from here. All the stuff that comes our way that leaves us shaken. When it's hard to believe. When it's easy to forget. These are exactly the times this promise is for. I have a friend who, he and I have gone on many adventures together. We have gone up mountains. We've hiked through like dense forests. We've gone on multi-day trips. We've gone on short trips. And one thing that's consistent with all of the adventures that we've gone on together is that at some point, as we're going on this adventure, as we're on the hike or we're climbing a mountain or we're working our way through whatever it is that we've decided to take on in that moment, there will be a moment where there's a shift and my friend's eyes are now looking at the ground. And as we're walking or climbing or hiking, he's looking, and now that I've done these adventures with him enough times, I know what he's doing. He's looking for a small white rock. Not a big fancy rock, just a small white rock. And when he finds the one he's looking for on this particular adventure, we'll just quietly tuck it in his pocket. And then we'll continue on. There's a tradition that he has, a habit that he has of every adventure that he goes on. He finds a small white rock. And he brings that rock back with him and he gives it to his wife. And he does it for a couple of reasons. One, he wants her to know he was thinking about her while he was on his adventure. So wherever adventure has taken him, he's thinking about her along the way, which I can attest. He and I have hiked together a lot of miles. He's talked about his wife a lot. He thinks about her a lot. But then there's also the piece of, he said, I want her to see when I'm gone how many times I have come back. Right? Some of the adventures we go on are risky. There's stuff that could go wrong, things that might not work out like we hope it will work out. And so for him to know that she knows when she looks out in their yard and she sees the pile of white rocks that he's come back that many times. He's thinking of me and he's come back. I know, he knows, that at some point he will hand her that final white rock. Right, at some point, he won't know that's the final one, but at some point he'll hand her that last rock. At some point, that last rock will be added to the pile, because here's the thing. He can't make the promise that Jesus made. He can simply point back to all the times he has come back from his adventures. He can't say, I promise I will always come back, or I will come back to you. And I hope it's a long time from now, but at some point that those white rocks will stop piling up in his yard. And because we can't make, as much as we'd like to make, none of us can make the promise that Jesus can promise. Jesus says, I promise I will come back for you. And so these last few weeks, we've been listening in on a conversation. Really, it's a huddle between Jesus and his closest followers, where he has his disciples gathered together, and he's helping them understand what's about to come. It's a clarifying conversation as he's gathered them together about the future. And so he's talked through what he's about to walk through. He's helping them understand the sacrifice that he's about to make as he lays down his life. And then he's talking to them about the way they should live their lives, about how his love should be at work in their lives and through their lives as they go through all the things they're about to go through, as they're preparing to be sent out on mission and all the things that are yet to come. And Jesus is wanting to make sure they understand why he's doing what he's doing. And he's wanting to make sure they understand what they should do in response to what he has done for them, what he's taught them, and then what he will do through them as they go on from there. So they're having this conversation. It's in John 13 that we pick up the story, but here's a question from Simon Peter. As Jesus is explaining all of these things, Simon Peter asked him, Lord, where are you going? Jesus answered him, where I'm going, you cannot follow me now, but you will follow afterward. Jesus says, you cannot, but you will. The where I'm going part, where he's going is what leads to the you will. There's a you cannot, but you will. Jesus leading the way, making the but you will possible. Because the thing is, they're not talking in this conversation as they're having what feels like, if we're just reading it and we're just sort of working our way through the Bible, just hearing this conversation, I think it almost sounds casual, like, well, where are you going? Like, what town are you going to? What adventure are you going on? What trip are you about to take? Jesus is talking about laying down his life. And then he's saying, and Peter, don't worry, you'll have your opportunity also. You'll have an opportunity. You can't do it now, but you will. So they're talking about Jesus' death on the cross and then Peter's eventual death as he refused to stop following Jesus. There is a lot of trust taking place in this conversation. There's a lot of trust woven all through a conversation like that. So then now Peter asks another question. And if we're expecting a particular question, the kind of question we would ask if Jesus has just said, I will lay down my life, and by the way, Peter, you will have your opportunity to lay down your life, there would be all sorts of questions that would begin to emerge in us. But it's not the question that we'd expect, given the context of the conversation, given the confirmation that Jesus has just given him about his future. Peter said to him, Lord, why can I not follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. Jesus answered, will you lay down your life for me? Truly, truly I say to you, the rooster will not crow till you have denied me 3 times. This is the very definition of a hard conversation. The very definition of a conversation where you're in a conversation and it's like deep breaths on every side of it and hard things to hear and hard things to say. But there's a principle at work while this conversation unfolds. It's really good news. It's that Jesus' ability to keep his promise isn't dependent on our ability to keep our promises to him. It's a good word. It's good news. Jesus' ability to keep his promise isn't dependent on our ability to keep our promises to him. And the thing is, there's more. Actually, Jesus can help us keep our promises. Because what I'm seeing as I'm spending time in this conversation, listening, I've had some very tender moments along the way in preparation for this conversation we're having this morning. Because what I'm seeing in this conversation as it plays out is that Jesus is at work in a very specific place in Peter's life. He's at work in that space between the you cannot and the but you will. That Jesus is at work in that space that we tend to try and take on our own, like, well, I can't, but I will figure it out. I will figure out how to be stronger, more reliable. I'll figure out how to straighten myself up, clean up my life, do what I need to do to get myself from I cannot to I will. And there's this conversation. Jesus pointing to this defining moment that's about to happen in Peter's life. He's going to watch as Jesus lays down his life, but then rises victorious from the dead. Jesus' death and resurrection is the defining moment of Peter's life. The good news is it's the defining moment for our lives as well. So when we fail, because we will fail. So Jesus says to Peter, it's going to be like 3 times. You're going to fail and again and again. When we fail, when we don't quite get it right, when we don't keep up our side of what we've told God that we're going to do along the way, where do we find our footing to try again? It's the same place that Peter would in the coming days. Jesus, his life, his death, and his resurrection. And it's beautiful. But it is so hard to hear. Not just the part of the journey where Jesus says, Peter, don't worry, like you're going to watch as I lay down my life and you will have your opportunity to do this as well. All the things they're about to walk through. It's not just that part that's hard. The impending denial, Jesus knowing how Peter is going to fail, even though Peter says he'll never fail. He's willing to lay down his life for Jesus. Can you imagine? I think this is part of what has haunted me through this whole conversation, this whole journey in preparation for this conversation this morning, is there was a moment in Peter's life where Jesus looked at him close, like eyeball to eyeball, looked at him and said, Peter, you will fail me. And you'll fail me again, and you'll fail me again. And then in the morning, the rooster's going to crow, and you're going to remember this conversation that we had where I looked you in the eye and said, Peter, you say you're going to do this thing. You can't. Can you imagine what that would feel like? Can you imagine what it would feel like to have Jesus look you in the eye, say, I already know you're not going to follow through on what you said you're going to do. It haunts me. And of course, there's going to be times when we fail. There's going to be times when we say we're going to do something, when we try our best, when we have these great ideas and our best intentions, and we don't follow through like we say we're going to follow through. Of course, there's going to be times where we fail. But if you're anything like me, I'm pretty sure you'd rather not see that coming. Right? You'd rather not have the one you're about to fail look you in the eye and say, I already know, even as you're making this commitment in this really great moment and you're saying, I'll never fail. Like, I already know. You're not just going to fail once. You're going to fail 3 times. The whole thing is going to fall apart, and the rooster's going to crow, and you're going to know and remember. And actually, Peter, probably every time the rooster crows for the rest of your life, you're going to remember that you failed. To hear that spoken by the one we'd never want to let down. And so Jesus' next words are very, very important. Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? Jesus, in this heightened emotional moment, this moment where Peter probably, if he's like, because he's a human being like us, reeling from this, what feels like rebuke, and he's being told he's going to deny, and all these things, and then Jesus, in this heightened emotional conversation, starts to use logic. Like believe in God. Believe in me. And guys, if you do that, then you're going to believe what I say. Like if you believe in God and you believe in me, then you have to believe what it is I'm telling you. Why would you think that I would tell you something that isn't true? If you believe in me, you can trust me when I say, I will go and prepare a place for you. By the way, this is also some really, really good words for an era in our history of humanity where it's all about believing in ourselves and figuring out how to find our way forward and trust ourselves and trust our impulses and all these kinds of things. The believe in yourself era of human history. Jesus doesn't say, Peter, believe in yourself. You've got this. You'll figure it out. You'll straighten yourself up and strengthen yourself. He says, believe in God and believe in me. And this is some rubber meets the road moments, some what do you really believe kind of statements, where Jesus is drawing out lovingly but directly, drawing out the difference between what we believe and how we live out what we believe. He says, if you believe in God, you believe in me, why would you not believe the words that I'm speaking to you? Why would I mess with you like that, Peter? You can trust what I have to say. And with that setup, with the echoes of, Peter, you're going to fail me, you're going to deny me, it's all coming apart. If it's up to you, Peter, we have no hope. With all of that swirling around, with the questions that Jesus asked, then the promise. He says, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again, and I will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. What a beautiful promise. Jesus promised to return. Jesus promised to come back for us. But that's not all. He promised to return, but in the statement that he made, he didn't just say, I'm coming back. He actually revealed another promise and the purpose of his entire life. Jesus promised to go and prepare a place for you. He said, I'll come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. 2 more parts to the promise. He says, I'll take you to myself. It isn't just that Jesus says, I will come and I will walk with you through the hard stuff of your life. He will do that. But his objective is to take you to himself. That where I am, you may be also. Which brings us to our second principle, more good news. Jesus wasn't just sent to be with you. His promised return reveals the purpose, to take you to myself, that where I am, you will also be. So when Jesus says, I will rise again, and then he keeps that promise, we can trust all of his other promises. We can trust him when he says, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may also be. And we see in the next parts of this conversation, Jesus actually gives us a glimpse of what this might look like as he talks about, you have truth. Right? Lots of confusing things in the world, lots of chaos swirling around you, but when you're with me, when I take you to where I am, when where I am is where you'll be, there's truth and there's freedom. And then something to carry us through 2 of the hardest parts of our journey. A couple of days ago, I had the privilege of spending some time in the Bighorn Mountains with my daughter and with her boyfriend and with her boyfriend's dad, and we're on a black bear hunt. And so we're kind of working our way through opening day and working our way through the mountains and just having a great time. But there's certain parts of this hike where they've been there before. We'd not been to this part of the Bighorns. And so we're working our way through. And there's these moments where they'd be in a conversation and I'd hear things like, well, this next stretch is going to be tough. I think this spot right here feels like a great place to stop, right? Like there was actually a specific moment along the way where one of them said to the other, the next 200 yards are going to be something. And I felt like in that moment that where I was, 200 yards wouldn't make any difference in my life. I'd be perfectly happy to stay right where I was. There were conversations where one of them would say, if we would just peek over this next ridge, you just wonder. You have to wonder, right? That's the burden of a mountain hunter. It's like, what's over the next ridge? What's the next thing? Where are we going to go? What? We can't leave that land unlooked at, right? We got to figure out our way to get there. It's going to be a little tough to get up there. We have these moments and conversations with people where you'll hear things like, be ready for this next part, or once you get through this next section. We recognize that not every section of the journey is exactly the same. There are certain parts that push us and require more of us. How about these two stretches of the journey of our lives? That stretch between the now and the not yet. Or in between the you can't, but you will. Here's what Jesus gives us for those parts. He says, peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. A few years ago, our family was walking through a difficult season of our lives. And as we were walking through this season, there was a lot that was discouraging, a lot that felt chaotic, a lot that we weren't sure exactly what the future looked like, just a lot of those kinds of things. We all have our moments in life like this. Some of you, it might be like literally this morning, this is happening. But I was walking through, and you know how this works. It's like your head is doing one thing, your heart is doing one thing, you're trying to figure it out, and then it feels like every situation you find yourself in, nobody understands what it is that you're walking through. And so I found myself in a room full of people who when you're going through those kinds of things, you know how this works, right? You look and you're like, everybody else has it easier than me. Everybody else has it figured out. Everybody else has got this all sorted, and yet here I am wrestling with and working my way through this hard thing. And in this moment, this room full of people who seem to have it all together, and I'm just frustrated. And I'm stressed out, and I'm trying to sort it out and trying to get it figured out. And then, back then I wore an Apple Watch, and it got a little notification. And I looked down, and on that little watch face was a YouVersion notification. Verse of the day probably went out to 1 billion people in that particular moment. But for me, in that moment, peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. This perfectly timed, God using one verse to do, without any context whatsoever, it's like one verse doing exactly what that one verse promised. Jesus is our source of peace. Not the world, not ourselves, not whatever you might be using to try and create peace in your life. We were created to find peace in Jesus. So there is no other source that can do for us, that can give us what Jesus gives us. It's the peace of Christ. It's a gift from him that you can't make for yourself, that you can't form for yourself. You can't grab all the other things around you and try and create peace like what Jesus gives you for free. It's not a transaction. You can't earn it. It's given to you. And it's a head and heart kind of peace. Head, like the fears and the worries, the moments where we find ourselves wrestling with a problem, working our way through, sorting out, thinking our way through a problem, versus those moments where we're praying and listening to what God has to say about the problem that's in front of us. The stuff that's in our head is all about what's yet to come. And then there's that troubled heart, the part that has everything to do with what has happened. The stuff that we're carrying, words spoken to us, situations that we find ourselves in, work that still needs to be done. The disciples, as Jesus is having this conversation, would see and experience all sorts of troubling things. And Jesus says, let me give you peace, real peace. Not a promise of just no trouble along the way, real peace. And there is no other way to get that kind of peace except through Jesus. But to understand that kind of peace, there's one more key. It's not a promise of particular circumstances. It's not a promise of peaceful circumstances. It's peace even in the tough circumstances that will come our way. Here's how Jesus explains it. He says, you've heard me say to you, I'm going away and I will come to you. He says, if you loved me, you would have rejoiced because I'm going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. And now I have told you before it takes place so that when it does take place, you may believe. Jesus is telling them this. Not only that they wouldn't be shaken when the things that come their way that are hard things to experience, the hard stuff that they wouldn't have seen coming. So I'm going to give you peace for those moments, but also so they would hear a promise spoken to them before the hard stuff, but also before the promise was fulfilled, so that Jesus didn't just walk out of the grave or show back up and say, well, I had planned to do that all along. So I want you to know, so that when it unfolds, so that when it is fulfilled, that you know that I promised that I would do it. You can trust me to keep my promises. And Jesus continues. He says, I will no longer talk much with you, for the ruler of this world is coming. He has no claim on me, but I do as the Father has commanded me, so that the world may know that I love the Father. Rise, let us go from here. Jesus says the time for words for this next stretch is past. What you're now going to see is actions. What you're now going to see is me living this out in front of you. And so Jesus, in this short conversation, there's so much that's happened. He's talked about the future. He's told Peter, he's like, you're going to deny me. He's promised to return. He's given his followers a gift of peace. And then even with everything that's yet to come, even with the ruler of this world prowling around and creating all sorts of trouble, Jesus is reminding them, and he's reminding us along the way that the ruler of this world has no claim. So you're about to see something that looks like victory. You're about to see something that looks like the ruler of this world has this all figured out and is going to be victorious in all these kinds of ways. As you watch the cross, and you watch my broken body laid in a grave, you're going to feel like the ruler of this world has won a great victory. But remember, no claim. But also along the way, Jesus says, don't forget that watch as I do what the Father told me to do, what the Father has commanded me, even through hard stuff, showing by example things that the disciples, that us as followers of Jesus need to see. As Jesus says, no claim, the ruler of the world has no claim on me. And the one who has sent me, who has told me to do what I'm about to do, I'm following through on what he's told me to do. It might be this morning that we need to hear it this way. Don't get so caught up in what looks like victory for the enemy that you miss the faithfulness of Jesus. Don't get so caught up. You're going to see news articles that are going to spin you up, that get the adrenaline going. You're going to want to talk about it. There's going to be things that come our way as we go through this coming week that are going to feel like the ruler of this world is winning a great victory. But don't get so caught up in what looks like a victory for the enemy that you miss the faithfulness of Jesus. And have peace. A Jesus promise. A conversation, bringing them along, preparing them for the future. Jesus handling, not running from or rejecting Peter because of the questions he has in this moment. Jesus handling the questions, meeting the disciples all through this conversation in their doubts and in their fears. And so here we are. And it's our moment. And it's our time to live faithful lives in the in-between. Right? Because what's revealed along the way is that Jesus does powerful work between the you can't, but you will moments in life. Right? Jesus does beautiful work when we allow him to do that work in us, when we allow him to form us and shape us and deal with our failures and deal with all the things that we've gotten wrong along the way, all the things that would make us say, I can't. What gets us through that stretch is Jesus at work, from the you can't to the but you will. And so it's our turn to live faithful lives in the in-between, not just living in the all fulfilled, right? If we were just living in a complete fulfillment of the promise, we wouldn't be looking forward to, we could just say, do you remember what happened? Living in the in-between and trusting the one who keeps his promises. Here's how. To trust Jesus, to do the work in that space between you cannot, but you will. We all have moments and places in our lives where we look and we say, I think what God wants for me and from me in this place of my life, in this environment where he's called me to be, this part of life that's hard, and I can't. And if we were in a conversation face-to-face with Jesus, he would do like he did with Peter and say, you actually can't, but you will. And Jesus at work in that space between you can't and you will can form us in ways that will utterly change our lives. So the question is this morning, what is it when we look at our lives where we say, I can't? Where if we would allow him to do work in us, can move us from you can't to the but you will. Things he's placed in front of us, stuff that he wants to deal with, things that we can't let go of, stuff that's been true maybe of our lives for a very, very long time. And it's like, I can't let go of that. I can't stop that habit. I can't stop doing that thing. Jesus says, but you will. To trust him, to open our hands that are holding on so tightly to the you can'ts of our lives, and to trust him with the but you will, to get us to the but you will. And then trust the peace that he gave you. That Jesus, when he spoke a promise of peace, he wasn't just talking to a handful of people who were his closest followers 2,000 years ago. Jesus knew when he spoke those words, they would be preserved for us across time, that those would echo from generation to generation to generation, that would allow us to not just live with hope, but to live lives differently because of what he's done. So it's my peace. For everything that you're going through, my peace I give to you. And it's that promise that he will return. That we, in our moments where we don't have peace, where our minds are trying to sort a problem, where our imaginations are doing its very best work to form a picture of the future that inspires as much fear and anxiety in us as it can. And where our hearts are troubled, things spoken to us, promises that feel like they've been broken, relationships, words spoken, all those things behind us. Jesus says, my peace, knowing what we were going to walk through, spoke words designed specifically to echo across time. So I give it to you. You can't make it for yourself. You can't grab hold of it for yourself. You can't form it for yourself. But I'm giving it to you. And so trust Jesus to work in that space between the you can't, but you will. And trust the peace that he promised you. Jesus promised to come back for you. Jesus keeps his promises.